Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi guys, today in this occasion we would like to share some information about our topic from group 2. But before that, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Balki Shaima Islami as the moderator, and today we're going to discuss about discourse, concept, and approaches. But before that, I'm going to introduce my group members. So the speakers of this topic are Aisyah Aulia Tahir, Atika Viva, me, Balki Shaina Islami, Fadilah Utami Oktaviani, and Welina Yusfa. Without any further ado, we're going to move to the very first topic about some important concept. The very first important concept of discourse, concept, and approaches is formal and functional paradigm in discourse. As you guys can see, there is a brief explanation about what is formal and functional paradigm in the slide. I'm going to read some of them. So, to begin a discourse, then we need to define the term in the discourse that we will pass on. For word processing, discourse analysis examines how language comprehension is considered in a text, social, and psychological context so meaningful and understandable to them that it can be used. Bisa turunkan slide-nya. As you guys can see to the slide, there are two types of examples. The very first one on the left, there are two friends are talking at the cafe after school. The very first person, A, said, "Are you coming to the cinema with us tomorrow?" And the person B answered, "I don't think so." From the existing answers in mind, there are different ways of asking and answering. Speaker A can address question in different ways, such as, "Would you like to come to the cinema tomorrow?" Or, "We are going to the cinema tomorrow. Will you come?" In the same way, Speaker B can respond in different ways, such as, "No, I'm not going to come with you," or "I hate cinemas," or "No, I will not." So as in the example in the slide, there are several ways to ask questions and how to respond, but the examples above is a partial example. There are lots more examples about this one. As a conclusion, the context of a speech act is in the context of a situation. That explanation, the speech acts borrow its ideas from structuralism. The indirect speech act of John Shirley was developed based on Austin's speech act. I think that's all. I give the chance to the next speaker. Thank you. Next speaker, time is yours.
I will explain about contextual and context. We can describe the two ways of approaching as contextual, which is referring to outside language, and formal, referring informal links between sentence and between clauses are known as cohesive devices. 7 of them. So the first one is form, verb form, parallelism, expression, repetition, lexical chains, substitutions, ellipsis, and conjunction. The next one is context. According to very abstract, for instance, when we are talking about in general. However, discourses often are specific about specific people, acts, and settings. So what is context? Simply means context is in which something exists or occurs. In this way, the formal context, for example, an official meeting with board directors will really text, like a chit chat in a room or restaurant. Thank you.
Okay, now my name is Nispa. Now I'm going to talk about cohesion and coherence. First, let me talk about cohesion. First, let me explain what is cohesion. So, cohesion is the grammatical and lexical linking within a text or sentence that holds a text together and gives it meaning. According to Halliday and Hassan, 1976, describe cohesion as a semantic concept that refers to relation of meaning that exists within a text. In other words, it is a semantic relation between an element in a text and some other elements that is crucial to the interpretation of it. Moreover, according to Rinkema, 2004, cohesion is the connection that results when the interpretation of a textual element is dependent on another element in a text. Cohesion refers to the connection that exists between element in a text. Let me give an example. In a sentence, James likes yellow apples. He eats them every day. In this example, the interpretation of he depends on another element in a text, James. Similarly, the interpretation of them depends on yellow apples. In this case, cohesion is achieved by the use of personal pronouns he and them. Now, let's talk about coherence. Next. Okay, coherence comes from Latin language. Coherere means to stick together, can be understood in a wide sense and in a narrow sense. In a wide sense, coherence is the semantic structure which helps to unite several sentences into holistic text. And in a narrow sense, coherence is the connection brought about by readers or listeners' knowledge that helps him or her to understand any given discourse through the knowledge of the context in which the discourse is unfolding. The example, let's see the dialogue. Tom said, "May I have some more?" "Yes, of course. Anytime you want more, just go ahead." So in this example, Tom doesn't mention what exactly he wants, but through the context of the situation, Helen knows that he's speaking about dumpling. Tom has just finished a plate of dumpling. Thus, despite the fact that Tom is not mentioning explicitly what he wants, his discourse is coherent, as is Helen's, who is not mentioning dumpling either. And now we can conclude that the difference between cohesion and coherence is that cohesion refers to the formal and semantics features of a text. It is a grammatical and lexical linking that holds the text together and gives it meaning, while coherence is what makes a text semantically meaningful and ideas are logically connected to produce meaning. That's all from me. Let's move to the next speaker.
Thank you, Eldina, for the brief explanation. So we're going to move to the next important point. We're going to talk about some important approaches to discourse. The very first important approaches to discourse is speech act theories. I'm going to give a brief explanation. So as you guys can see at the slide, there is a brief explanation about introduction to speech act theory. So the speech act theory considers language as a sort of action rather than a medium to convey and express. The contemporary speech act theory developed by G.L. Austin, a British philosopher of languages. So I'm going to jump to the examples. So for the example, the teacher asked Olivia whether she had stolen the candy. Olivia replies with, Here, the utterances of Olivia describes the event in fact of answering her teacher whether the situation was true or false. The performative utterances is something which do not describe anything at all. The utterances in these sentences or in the part of sentences are normally considered as having a meaning of its own. The feelings, attitudes, emotion, and thoughts of the person performing linguistic act are more of a principal unit here. So for further, Austin divides his linguistic act into three different categories. So the first category is locutionary act, illocutionary act, and perlocutionary act. So I think that's all for speech act theories. I'm going to give a chance to Atika Fifa to give a brief explanation for the next slide. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the change. The next topic is interactional sociolinguistics. I will give you a little bit explanation about interactional sociolinguistics. So, interactional sociolinguistics is an approach to discourse analysis that studies how people use language in face-to-face interaction. Specifically, it focuses on how people manage social identities and social activities as they interact. Interactional sociolinguistics derives from a variety of disciplines, including ethnomethodology, conversation analysis, linguistics, pragmatics, linguistic anthropology, sociology, ethnography, and dialectology. The methodology adopted by interactional sociolinguistics involves close discourse analysis of video or audio recordings of interaction. Arguably because of the complex, fleeting, and unconscious nature of contextualization, because it is necessary to have recordings in order to reveal the meaning of interaction, otherwise the signaling could be missed or misinterpreted in real time. So I think that's all about interactional sociolinguistics. Let's move to the next speakers.
Thank you very much, Atika, for the explanation. So I'm going to move to the next topic about some important approaches to discourse. It is about the ethnography of communication. I give Utami the time.
Thank you very much for the change. So, ethnography of communication is the study of communication within the background of social and cultural practice and beliefs, first introduced by Delheims in 1962. So again, like sociolinguistic, this one is also taking about the area that is closely related to the social and also the cultural practices, even the beliefs. So in this slide, we can see the purpose. Ethnography of communication has two main purposes. So next slide, we talking about speaking models. So speaking models. The first one is as for setting and scene. It is the physical location where the speech takes place. So the example like campus, school, onboarding, and P for participants, the people who take part in the speech, like lecturers, students, friends, and family member. And E for ends, the purpose and the outcome of the speech, like giving information, telling the fact. And A for X sequence, the speech acts, and the sequence in which they are carried out, like directing, promising, warning. K for key, the tone and the manner in which speech is carried out. It's example like serious or joking, sincere or ironic. I for instrumentalities, the medium of communication that is used. The example is speaking, signing, writing, drumming, and whistling. And And for norms of interaction, the rule of speech, interaction, and interpretation, like the rules about floor holding, turn taking, delivery, and topic. And the last one is G for genre, the type of speech, its cultural context, like interview, gossip, and the other preexisting conventional forms of speech are drawn or sit in the producing appropriate contribution to talk, like quoting from mythology or poetry or scripture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Utami, for the brief explanation. So we're going to move to the next important approaches to discourse. So the next speaker is Aisha. She's going to explain about pragmatics and conversation analysis. For Aisha, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to explain about pragmatics. So as we know, pragmatics is the study of the factors that govern our choice of the language in social interactions and the effects of our choice on others based on Crystal in 1997, page 102. Put another way, pragmatics examine how people do things with words and how people interpret what others are doing when they speak. Pragmatics uses whole grammatical phrases as its units of analysis rather than words or sentence structure. As Margarita Puig in 2003, page 2 argue that discourse and pragmatics have much in common, not least the concern with utterances rather than the elements of a sentence. Pragmatics, like discourse analysis, goes beyond the structural study of the sentence. But while discourse analysis explains the interpretation of the elements in question without going outside the language, pragmatics resort to other ambits of human activities. Only in this way one can explain how utterances are interpreted and how successful the interpretation of utterances is managed. And now I'm going to explain about conversation analysis. So conversation analysis is an approach to understand the society based upon the cause analysis of how people make sense of and establish in the social world through everyday encounters. There are two key concerns for conventional conversational analysis. First, to describe the order lines, structures, and sequential patterns of interactions as evidenced through conversations, and second, to uncover social order through discourse analysis of the mundane activity of conversation. The focus of conversation analysis is not on why individuals behave and speak as they do, but on examining how participants go about the interacting and inferring the nature of social order from the analysis of process. That's all. Thank you. Back to MC.
Thank you very much for the explanation, Aisha. So we're going to move to the last part of important approaches to discourse. I give Atika Fifat to give a brief explanation about variation analysis. Atika, time is yours.
So the last topic is variation analysis. Variation analysis is pattern both socially and linguistically, and that such pattern can be discovered only through systematic investigation of speech community. Thus, variationists try to discover pattern in the distribution of alternative ways of saying the same thing. That is, the social and linguistic factors that are responsible for variation in ways of speaking. Next slide, please. Several analyses have identified 5 characteristics of variation analysis within discourse. The first is discourse variables involve a finite number of discrete variants, independent and autonomous, which do not form part of continuum of surface realization, but are related to each other only by their identical function. Second, it is not feasible to contrast the presence of a discourse form to its absence as is done in phonological studies. The linguistic context where the form will appear cannot be anticipated, even though it is possible to characterize some linguistic contexts that favor its usage. Third, substitution among the different manifestations of most discourse processes have consequences at several linguistic levels, like pragmatic and interactional. Fourth, we cannot delimit and define in advance the set of different discourse functions. In addition, discourse forms are structurally diverse and can occur at distinct levels of analysis. They can be complex process, narration, description, argument, large units, repetition, rhetorical, question, reported speech, or more circumscribed forms, markers, and particles. Fifth, the discourse variable has in general a large number of variants, different forms, and in consequence requires a more complex quantitative treatment than the usual variable rule method elaborated for binomial variant. I think that's all about variation analysis. Back to MC.
Thank you very much for the brief explanation, Atika. So I think that's all about discourse and its concept and approaches. Thank you very much for your time. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.